Welcome to another episode of Extraordinary Leadership Podcast. Today, I have a seasoned executive who brings over 20 years of experience in transportation and logistics industry. Brent Melvin, currently having a role of a general manager in RSA Global, that is a digital freight forwarder and supply chain solutions company based here in UAE. In this episode, we explore the importance of authenticity, empowerment, and collaboration in driving organizational success. Brent is a humble thought leader and is sharing his story, pivotal shifts, and how he transitioned from autocratic to collaborative leadership style. I'm sure you're going to enjoy this conversation. So let us begin. Welcome to the Extraordinary Leadership Podcast. This is a place for you if you aspire extraordinary, fueled with inspiration, meaningful conversations, and valuable insights that are going to support your journey of becoming an extraordinary leader and making truly a difference in your organization and living a desired life. My name is Dagmara Asbreuk, and I am your host in this show, and I'm also founder and CEO of Extraordinary Leadership. I'm bringing you exceptional leaders, change makers from different industries, sharing their stories, and above all, what made them most successful, impactful, and happy. I'm also sharing my discoveries from navigating and leading 15 years in a corporate world, building my business, and empowering senior and executive leaders to go to their next level with their organizations and in their lives. I hope that you are excited and ready. So let us begin. So without further ado, I want to say hi, Brent, and welcome to the show.
Hi, and thank you very much. Love to be here.
Yeah, how do you feel to be here?
Oh, I'm excited to be here. Like you said, sharing is something I enjoy doing. So it's a nice forum, and I appreciate the invitation.
Cool. And this is another conversation. We are moving from our one-on-one conversations to sharing some of this conversation with the world, right? So that's already an interesting for us as well to move forward. So Brent, I know that there will be a lot of interesting topics to discuss around leadership, but before we dive into them, it would be great to get to know the listeners more about yourself, get to know you actually.
Well, it's a long story, as you know. So some 30 years in industry, but more importantly, before that, I'm a family man. Family for me is everything. And the funny thing is that a lot of leadership comes from parenting. Whether that's good or bad is debatable, but this is the foundation. I'm originally born in South Africa. I spent my first part of career, including my education there, and then moved to the UAE just on 20 years ago. So I've been here for a long time. It's been an amazing experience over the time, learning about different cultures, different people, different styles of operation and thinking, and ultimately adjusting my style of leadership and engagement according to different cultural experiences and expectations. So I'm someone who loves to learn. I think that every engagement is not only sharing my knowledge, but equally learning from others. And this has been a philosophy of my life.
Beautiful, beautiful. So definitely a growth mindset, growth-driven leader. That's the definition that I hear coming out. Is there any other keyword or characteristic that best describes you?
I try to be humble. So I don't tend to look for all those fabulous keywords that put you on a pedestal. It's not my nature to be sort of presenting myself in such a fashion. I've been very fortunate in my career to have multiple leadership roles in different organizations. And I'm very proud of the legacy I've left in organizations that I've worked with. And as I often say to people, testament to my engagement with what would be my staff is the amount of tears spilt when I leave an organization, and then long-term relationships formed around that. So I think that speaks volumes about your level of engagement with people and peers around you. For me, there's been a huge transition in leadership from very rough autocratic style leadership when I was in the military in my younger days, to now where everything for me is around collaboration, it's about empowerment, and it's about engagement. So it's been a tremendous journey, and I've loved all of it and all the different stages and been able to look back and appreciate how I've grown. So I think that the idea is I want to continue that journey. And of course, our conversation has been around this and trying to be authentic in the way that we act and behave and how we lead others. And ultimately, what the future holds is really this new transition or this journey towards my authentic self.
Beautiful, beautiful. And you took recently also a new role, isn't it, as GM in RSA?
So RSA Global Logistics, I've taken up a role of the joint venture GM. So it's a relationship between two companies, one being a large international American-based, or actually global-based cold chain company called Americold, and the local business RSA Global Logistics. So it's an exciting new venture, big growth ambitions. So they are looking for somebody to really lead that into this next phase of success. And I'm the fortunate person to do that.
Wonderful. And listening to you kind of describe the definition of successful leadership for you, right? Which is collaboration, empowerment, authenticity, with trust relationship. I think that's what you mentioned also has been a pivotal part, and all the tears by leaving organization, which just, shows that you were really people oriented leader. No, in those organizations you were, but really, of course. So I was wondering, what helped you to get there? So what were maybe the pivotal moments in your life, those that shaped that form of leadership?
Yeah, so there is a big flick switch in a point of leadership in my life. So I'm going to go all the way back to my days in South Africa, where I was the operations manager in a trucking business. And there were no computers in the days. There were no mobile phones. We were working with big planning boards and dispatching drivers across a counter. And once they left the office, their only means of communication was a landline phone at the pickup point or at a filling station, something to that effect. And we were responsible for ensuring the team on the vehicle and material, because they had to go and do certain pack jobs and these types of things. And my job as the operations wasn't simply to plan the operations, but was equally there to ensure the operations is performed the way we need to for an organization. And the particular moment that always sticks with me is I had this phone call on the landline saying, "Boss, we don't have enough packing material." And my immediate reaction was very typical autocratic knee-jerk style reaction, where I started blasting this guy because they didn't have the material to perform the task at hand. And shortly after the phone call, my then boss pulled me aside and he gave me just a couple of words of advice. And it was quite simple. He said to me, "Brent, these people are phoning to get support. They don't have a means of doing anything without your help. So he's reaching out to help, and you've just gone and blasted him as opposed to helping." And it was a real dawning moment on how we as leaders misconstrue our roles. From that point forward, I took on this persona of being leadership, but as a leader, my job is to support. So empowering is part of that supporting. So you start thinking about solutions in a different way. You start planning a little bit better. You start being more aware of what goes on from an operational perspective. That's the side. But my engagement with people was now a very different picture. As opposed to blasting these poor people, I was enabling them, making sure that part of planning, they had a contribution towards a success. And that truly was a pivotal moment for me in terms of how to think. So I moved out of this autocratic military style of management into now trying to lead and plan and prepare and just be better overall at the whole people side of things. So the big thing for me is I understand that an organization is simply an organization until it has people. Then it becomes a business. Then you empower those people to perform and it becomes successful. So it's building blocks. But without people, what are we? A bunch of robots? No. Maybe in the future. So AI is bringing all sorts of new concepts and ideas. But right now, our businesses are about people.
Yeah. Interesting. So it seems like that call was a shift. That call was a wake-up call.
Very
That
much
call
so.
from that time, your
Very
line
much.
manager was really a very nice gesture to wake you up. And how many years have you been in a military service before? And
So it was
this- oh,
mandatory for us to do the 2-year service.
got it. Okay.
So
Mhm.
it was fun, by the way. You know, people would always engage things in different styles. So I'm always on the positive side of life. And for me, going into the military, I didn't see it as a tedious, mandatory requirement. I went in to kind of discover what I could learn, and that's what happened. But military is military. So you can't be the nice guy and collaborate. Otherwise, there are people's lives at stake.
Yeah, it's a different safety and risk scenario than in
Exactly.
business, right? Where
Exactly.
when most of the situations are not at such a risk of life.
And typically businesses are not that style when
Yeah.
you leave a military style environment. And there are some businesses that require that absolute detailed command. But fundamentally, most businesses require people to come to work to perform to the best of their ability. And guess what? I like people to enjoy what they do as well. We spend so many hours at work, so why should we be there feeling this pressure and not being able to perform or deliver because someone's breathing down our necks and measuring our every move? So I have a very, very simple philosophy, if I may share, about how I perform in the workplace. So empowerment is about enabling people to do the tasks that they're asked to do. Collaboration is ensuring that they are aware of their peers and their surroundings, to listen to what else the customer needs or what else may be going on around them in the business so that they can support each other, and working within a framework of objectives so that the person's running on a clear, clean road of where they need to be, where the organization needs to be, and what their role is in order for us to get to that end. So by doing this, they're not left to their own devices. Empowering is not abdicating. It's creating structure and allowing them to perform within a certain set of rules. It makes their job so much easier as well. And guess what? It's easy to measure them on performance, which means that you can reward them when they exceed certain expectations.
Yeah. Beautifully said, the definition of what empowerment is. And so many leaders, I think in theory or generally have this understanding, yes, we need to empower more, we need to focus more on people. And they do struggle with that. What do you think is the source of struggling into shifting from more autocratic control-based type of management, which still do happen in organizations, or at least when the stress or pressure is higher, that's what our biology or our system infuse and triggers if we don't know how to manage that. So what has helped you to switch from those two different styles, kind of, right? And leaning more on empowering people?
I think it's experience over time and getting feedback. There are a lot of tools in the market where you do 360 reviews, peer reviews and such. I don't necessarily subscribe to them, but I do listen to what goes on. I cannot be perfect and I can't be everything for everybody. So it's always a balance between what an organization requires and the framework of a business. We have policies and procedures for reasons to create governance and making sure that's adhered to, but at the same time trying to enable people to perform within that same set of criteria. So to answer your question, I think good and bad experiences over time and trying to learn from the bad and trying to do more of the good is a good habit. So this continuous desire to learn and to listen and to be aware of surroundings. It's also fair to say that having a mentor in your life is an absolute must. I think any business leader of any worth today should have someone help them reflect, because we're not very good at looking in the mirror and seeing what we don't want to see. But having a coach and a mentor to guide you and to highlight certain things and give you tools to overcome some of the constraints and equally promote some of the good things is really vital. And I've had a number of mentors in my career. Some have walked the path with me for a number of years and others have been relatively short time. And I have a philosophy that people will come into your life at the right time and they will leave at the right time. And it's always been that case. Once I've learned what they've had to offer and share, then we've moved away from that mentor coaching relationship to more of a long-term friendship touch base. But it's still an essential part of any leadership is to continue this evolution. And I think self-reflection is probably the single most important component of being a leader. And I differentiate strongly between being a manager and a leader. So a manager is very much output driven, whereas a leader is about engaging people to perform. Yeah. So we are striving towards the same end goal, but it's, one is always going to serve much more than the other.
Absolutely. And thank you for mentioning about, having a mentor or coach. When you just look at the sport people, just to make a comparison, right? High performance athletes, for example, right? So the reason why they are so high performing is because they're in constant support through various coaches and mentors. And it's exactly the same. The challenge that a leader have, the higher the leader goes, the challenge is bigger, right?
Correct.
And as you said, the outside perspective, the trigger of seeing what you can't see on your own, outside of the box as well, and reflection is such an important thing. And of course, when you share, it's obvious that you are a continuous learner, right? So you share this mindset, you know that this is not because you're not good enough.
Absolutely.
But because you want to be better and better serving, right?
Absolutely.
And I also see that some leaders are challenged with this in their own mind, because they might have this perspective, okay, if I need to go and ask for someone for support, that means that I am not good? Or what does that mean? And this is where, of course, they stay in the trap. How do you see that?
So I think there are a couple of things. Personality always arrives at work, and it doesn't always translate to the best form of engagement. So I like the idea of checking the ego at the door. And I think there's a difference between being that megalomaniac and being a strong leader. Sometimes we have to be assertive. As I said, we have policies and procedures that we have to adhere to, and these form structures and guidelines. But if I've woken up in a bad mood, for whatever reason, some crazy guy cut me off on the way to work, and I bring that into work with me and I start blasting the staff, it becomes a snowball effect. Then it's about this one that talks behind my back and that one that doesn't listen to me and so forth. It's never going to pay dividends, right? So it's understanding that when we come into the workplace, we have a task to perform. Mine just happens to be that of leading the business. So I've got many things to juggle, whether it's financial, operational, or customer issues. We're always looking at all these different parameters. But I have a team around me who are performing in those particular silos, and it's understanding their capabilities, making sure they are fit for the purpose and capable of doing what we need. It's a matter of coaching them, by the way.
Absolutely.
A big part of my job is continuously coaching them and training them. So I'm blessed in the fact that I want to continuously learn. I'm cursed in the fact that I always want to share and tell people, because I take up way too much time educating people. But the output is quite simple. I end up with an amazing team around me of performers. Now, as I said, checking ego at the door is important. We all have different styles of personality or personality attributes that no matter what we do, I can't change that. It's an ingrained part of my being. But identifying and knowing the better and the worst traits means I can lean into the better traits and try and check the worst and be conscious of it. It really is an awareness. And when you feel yourself teetering on the brink of going into that aggressive style or nasty style of personality, walk away, take a breath, take 5 minutes out if you need to. There are too many stress factors on us all the time. Another point, just to answer your question, is mindfulness. And a lot of people go, oh, that's all woo-woo and silly. But actually taking some time out for yourself and being able to be mindful. And there are many practices, whether it's breathing, meditation, just the fact that you can focus the mind, calm yourself, get yourself back into the right mindset, and then re-engage will pay massive dividends.
Absolutely. And, for me personally in the journey, that has been really also a work, because that takes practice, isn't it? And I can see in all of my clients that this is one of the, let me say, stepping stone at one of the block that we work around, because yeah, if it was so easy, we would not need to take any efforts, right? But it does take efforts. It actually shifts in a mind that slowing down does pays off to speed up, and definitely helps your mind to be more clear in decision making and engaging and making an impact, which you just described. You engage not from a state of stress and agitation that came from another meeting. So those mindful breaks between the meetings sometimes can be really gold.
Absolutely.
As well. In your journey, Brent, what were the biggest challenges in your leadership journey? Because obviously the awareness is the first part, right? And I think that the wake-up call was great. And it sounded like very swift and easy switch from one side to another. So I'm just curious, maybe that was not in that part, but what has been the biggest challenge? Because let's face it, we all have them, right? So what was for you the biggest challenge?
Multiple. My biggest challenge up to a point in life was my ego. So having to really check myself. I'm certainly, I don't claim to be the perfect leader. It's an ongoing, as you said, something that we practice all the time. But checking my ego was a biggie, and understanding that people are valuable. I'm no better nor worse than any other person, right? The fact that we put ourselves on pedestals is wrong. I don't need to be respected because I have a title. I earn respect through my actions. So these are lessons that I've learned as I've gone along the road. The biggest challenge for me has always been my bosses. Because they don't always subscribe to the same philosophies and outlooks that I do. I've been told many times through my career, I'm too soft and too gentle.
Interesting.
Reality, however, is, why do I have to shout? If I sadly have to reprimand somebody, I don't need to raise my voice. And they know that they're in the wrong. They know that they've not performed to task if it gets to that extreme sort of situation. Being nice and leading by great example are two different things. I'm not a nice guy. I just want to lead my people through a good journey in a good way.
Yeah, it reminds me of the quote of being the change you want to see in the world. I think from Gandhi, which resonates with most of the people I work with, because that's where's the source, right? Wanting to make a positive impact and evoke the positive change. I hear you saying 2 times about this checking ego. So my curiosity goes, and I guess also listeners, how does a leader check the ego?
Well, again, it's reflection and feedback. So when you arrive in the workplace, you could kind of look at a typical day in the life of, you arrive at work, whatever the starting time of day, 8 in the morning, and you storm into the office, you're shouting orders left and right, there wasn't a delivery on time, or something went wrong, and as opposed to reflecting on the why, looking at the root cause, understanding the consequence, fixing the particular issue at hand, and then putting a long-term sustainable fix in place. What you do is you go in shouting and throwing your coffee cup around and slamming books on the table. What do you think the response from your staff is going to be? So the fact of this matter is they will turn around in a similar manner. They will project it towards their team, and they will despise you for your approach. So what have we achieved from a corporate culture perspective? We're breaking down the pillars of a successful culture because we're not respecting each other. We're bringing aggression or violence or ego into the workplace and allowing that to permeate. So my other example was, come in, understand the situation. Okay, things go wrong. They do. It's natural. More importantly, what did we do immediately to fix it? Is our customers still satisfied, or have we given them an alternative solution? Have we communicated? Are we resolving the matter? And then, as I said, what long-term solution sustainably? Now the outlook is very different. Staff are looking at this going, whoa, priorities, right? Priority was customer, priority was fix the problem. And then we're putting something in place that doesn't allow it to happen again. My boss has allowed me to learn from this particular incident, and he's shown me and helped me to resolve the issue and fix it forever.
Absolutely. So it's like shifting from blaming and, of course, wasting your energy and time and increasing the negative emotions in yourself and in organization towards solutions. And here is what you mentioned before, so important to manage your mind and manage your emotions so that you can respond and not react, and so that you can unleash that positive energy in a system, and also see this situation as opportunity for growth for everybody, because usually those moments, those challenges are helping us to see what we couldn't see before, isn't it?
Yep.
But when they happen, we are really very angry and want to get back to the plan we thought was the greatest, right? And we very often discover that maybe we omitted something. So when you were sharing about your boss's response or reaction, or how they view your leadership style, that's an interesting piece, because actually quite yesterday, I've spoken with another executive coach, and we said we exchange this common dilemma of there is a difference between performance and being, for example, empathic or authentic leader, right? A humble leader. And it's like a nice to have rather than is a driver to performance. So what's your view, and what could help leaders to actually marry them both? Because obviously one is driver of the other, but so many kind of separated. And especially when there is a stressful situation, a lot of pressure in a business, the tendency is to focus on measurement, performance, and control, rather than on people, empowerment that you mentioned, coaching, slowing down to some extent as well. How do you view that?
Sadly, way too many of us think we know it all. We think that the way we lead and do is an acceptable norm. So they don't even go down the road of necessary reflecting or trying to understand how they can be better. So you find very mature organizations will continue to coach and mentor their leaders. They'll do all sorts of leadership training breakouts. They'll do 360 peer reviews or upward reviews. And utilize the information to try and strengthen their leadership team. In less mature organizations, conversely, and very often, sadly, in family-type businesses, this is it's a barrier to entry. So whether that business owner or leader is a narcissist and really couldn't give you the time of day, or whether there's somebody who is not a narcissist but just not willing to reflect and recognize what you're doing is bringing value to the organization. So there are many things that have to be looked at. For me, a lot of it starts around corporate culture. So if the corporate culture is of such a nature that you are not comfortable daily because it's just a very toxic environment, then don't expect any leader to succeed with my style of leadership. Because ultimately, it's not going to work. It's going to conflict. What they're looking for is someone to come in and shout. But if you're in a mature organization, which, by the way, I am so happy now to have joined RSA Global, because it's an incredible corporate culture. And it allows me to thrive. Now, what happens is when I'm allowed to thrive, I'm going to automatically influence people around me, both upward as well as my peers and my juniors. And we emulate each other on particular behaviors. So that means all we're going to do is deepen the corporate culture. We're going to make it an amazing place to work, and we don't have to be measured by some external body to come and say this is an amazing place to work. We know it is because our people are telling us that, right? We measure our employee satisfaction. So when you can engage a manager who's willing to listen, then you will empower the organization to be stronger. When you have managers who are not capable of listening, they will disempower me as a manager, and to the harm of the organization, sadly, in the long run. So these are the kind of things that go on, and I've seen many examples of that, sadly, through my career. You know, there's not been a perfect example of a manager, but I've had some excellent managers in my time, and I've had some that are equally just as bad.
Yeah. What would you advise to those leaders who, like yourself, are driven to make a difference into how they lead and make a positive impact and lean on collaboration and connection and drive performance through people and empowerment, and find themselves in a culture that is actually not yet there?
Well, it's a hard question to answer because I suppose it would be very unique by each particular condition. But if you find yourself in that environment, I would suggest it's not going to be a long-lived career step. So if there is no willingness from the organization to want to change, then you've really got two choices. You either have to adhere to or you make your own change. And that's a hard thing to say, right? We're always looking for that job, that perfect job. And sometimes we find it. It just doesn't happen to be in the perfect organization. And you have to be bold enough to be able to step away or try and encourage them to consider changing, which is also quite a bold move because somebody who's not willing to change will not change because they can't see the problem. I think for the most part, most people want to reflect and want to change. So you know, to be fair to organizations that are still in this sort of development or maturing phase, if they're open to listen, then you can succeed with developing change. I think that part of what you do is you employ people like yourself, like-minded people who have the similar outlook. So you can influence at a larger base the corporate culture. But ultimately, if your boss happens to be a narcissist, good luck, get out.
Yeah, that's a very difficult one. And it, of course, depends where you are in a hierarchy or what's your impact in organization. So when you are as a leader, CEO, stepping into organization, then obviously getting along the people that you want, like-minded people, is much easier than when you are, for example, a leader in one of your part of organization where you have less influence on that. So yeah, completely understood. I wanted to ask you for this question because yes, it's a reality for many, unfortunately still, and it's a, I think is this need for many of the executive leaders to wake up and put the right people and right measures in place, and starting with themselves, starting with reflection that you mentioned. And in the beginning of the conversation, you mentioned about authentic leadership. How important is that, and where are you on that journey yourself?
Well, for me, it's become very important because I want to be that authentic self. And it's a complex journey because you have to unravel some of your behaviors and habits. You have to understand what this authentic self looks like. And you have to understand where it's applied and how it's applied. We spoke about, for example, masks and this idea of, you know, typically I would have in the past my at-home mask and I would be a different persona at work, and these two avatars living separate lives that were fully integrated. And the downside to that is they would overlap sometimes. Work comes home. It can't be avoided sometimes. But if I'm acting out in an unsavory manner at home, how does that reflect on my family? And that's incredibly unfair. And ultimately, it's not the person I wanted to be in the workplace either. So I've raised a family, and I'm very proud of my boys, both in university, finishing their respective degrees. I think we've given them a great foundation, and that wasn't done through being aggressive or being too hard or affirmative. It was giving them space, but also giving them boundaries to work within. So similar to my business approach, right? This is what you can and what you can't. This is where we're going. It's what I need you to achieve, but you've got all the freedom to get there. And I love that idea in the workplace now. So I've actually transitioned not from having this business avatar and facade to now being much more me, the guy that's at home with my wife and my children as a loving father and husband, and trying to be that respected leader in the business, giving my people the same level of nurturing in their particular environments.
Yeah, that's really nicely said. And there are so many similarities towards being a leader in an organization and being a parent. It's sometimes you ask yourself, which is more challenging environment?
I tell you, being a parent is more challenging.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You don't measure exactly the same measure performance, but yes, it's a leadership role as well that you have, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, nice. So, Brent, there's so many things that we unpack today, right? The things of importance of reflection, importance of being open, I think, to learning and growth, which obviously you're walking that, right? Which is another important fact, walking the talk fact. You talked about importance of authenticity, importance of empowerment and focusing on people, right? Focusing on collaboration, understanding, and helping them to basically grow and explore and make mistakes and grow from that. What would you say is the key message that you would like to pass to leaders listening to this show?
Well, I think there's many things, but let me say this. Employing people better than yourself is not a failure. It's a huge success. Many leaders are very scared about employing junior people better than themselves because they think they will no longer have a job. What they need to understand is that people better than us will make us more successful. Have confidence as a leader in your ability to lead your team and utilize the strength of your team to make a success of yourself and of your business.
Absolutely. Really nicely rounded the whole conversation, right? And going forward, even thinking about AI, all the changes and technological disruptions that we're leaving, the new era, this as well as empowerment, focusing on people and being authentic in a workplace, as you mentioned, so that you nurture this relationship, nurture this trust, nurture that collaboration is definitely going to remain the most important focus of a leader, isn't it?
I believe so, yes.
Fantastic. Brent, where is the best way to connect with you?
LinkedIn is generally the best channel. I do quite a lot of writing one way or another in my field of passion, which happens to be transportation management and the nuances around that. So I would suggest that anybody wanting to reach me, I don't do any other social media channels. I prefer to keep it business oriented. That's the best way to reach out. And of course, I'm always happy to engage with anybody.
Cool. Thank you very much for that. I will be putting that as well in a podcast. And first of all, thank you very much for being here, for sharing your authentic story, being vulnerable as well at some moments of these challenges, sharing that, because I think that's what everybody values as well. I'm definitely going to reflect on this conversation in order to create a rich summary from what we discussed, but many important points about collaboration, connection, human type of leadership, which is definitely the way to go. And yeah, thank you very much for being in this show. And I wish you, first of all the best in your new role, because that's a next interesting challenge for you and place where you can make an impact.
Thank you so much. It's a real pleasure to be here. You have brought me into this next phase of my journey, and I thank you for that sincerely. And I think anybody who wants to emulate some of the things that I do should reach out to you equally. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Brent. Thanks.
Thank you for listening and watching to this episode of Extraordinary Leadership Podcast. I hope you find inspiration, insights, and ideas that can help you be more impactful and successful in leading your organization or team to the next level. Do subscribe to this channel to follow this podcast and share it with other leaders who might benefit from it too. I wish you a fantastic day, and please remember, be the change that you want to see. Until next time.